Today I want to talk about journey. Henny, as we send his journey go on, and then we send him to the next stage of his life. I like this concept of a journey. This is something actually new, last 20 or 30 years, because historically, they did not emphasize the Christian journey that much. They more emphasize the first moment you met Jesus Christ, right? The moment you confess God, the moment you connected to God. So it's like a once in a life, the life-changing moment you met God, that you earned the salvation by your faith, and that's the most important thing, the moment of baptism, moment of conversion. Usually we emphasize the important moment in our life. But people found out life will move on, go on. That even if we met Jesus Christ, we don't just go heaven immediately, right? We still have a life, 20 years, 30 years, 50 or 70 years. We need to live, keeping our faith, right? So people start talking about journey. It's like a journey you continuously walk with God. Our retreat theme was walk with God, right? It's not just one time like encountering God, meet with God, but walking with God continuously. Since the moment you experience, you confess Jesus as the Lord, you walk through the journey. That this world, people can say life is journey too. Life is a wandering journey, and then they going through desert, or life is like sailing or navigating the unknown path. A lot of people talk about journey, but actually Christian journey is different from this worldly people's journey, because their life, usually they don't talk about purpose. We say this is journey. So I want to say more like quest. It's not just journey, it's a quest. We start this journey with God, and it's not just to walking with God. We have a quest to achieve. So purpose. The Rick Warren, the Saddleback Church, he is like champion to advocate about this purpose, right? He's a very famous book, the known book, that the purpose-driven life. He's define Christian life as a purpose-driven life. So it's not just you live day by day, repeating the same thing. Christians have a special, the specific purpose, and to know what's the purpose of your life. Pursue it. That's the most important thing in the Christian life. So he advocated, and then he emphasized it, and a lot of people agree with him, right? Yeah, Christian life, we have a purpose. What's the purpose? Daily walk with God, keeping our faith without losing it until we stand before Jesus Christ, right? Even if we met Jesus already, life is unknown, and a lot of changes stuff, and then we might be challenged. Can we survive to next challenge? Even if we could keep our faith this year, what happened to next year? As I was Navy, a lot of people ask me, hey, how did you deal with the seasick, right? The Navy, navigating, there's a lot of seasick. Were you okay? So I answer like this: nobody is okay for seasick. As long as we are the living creature, human, everybody go through difficulties for seasick, right? But the difference is, if you're the beginner, if you just start navigating at the 1 yard of the wave, you already start having the seasick and you have a dizziness, right? But if you're like being a sailor for like 30 years, even if the level 3, the 3 yard or 4 yard height of a wave, still you can hold yourself. But eventually, I say this, nobody can deal with the seasick if it's really severe. If it become like a wave height was like 5 yard, 10 yard, yeah. Whether they were a sailor or not, everybody go through it. It's like suffering. Are you good for suffering? Can you deal with the suffering? Can you keep your faith in the midst of suffering? It's because of, I think we can keep for a while our faith, because the suffering, the amount of suffering, we can deal with it. But even the most righteous person in the Old Testament, Job, right? When suffering was too severe, his faith was shattering down. It's the same with us. We try to live keeping the faith, but we actually faithful because the amount of suffering is not too big yet, right? But we don't know. God might send you the biggest storm of our life. Sometimes we will lose a job. Sometimes we have a financial difficulty. Sometimes we might lose the person that we love. That those things come up, are you sure? If you will keep your faith before God until the end of your life. So that's a journey with the quest. We need to survive, not just survive, but keeping the faith until the next 60 years, next 50 years. Can we keep our faith before God? That's a journey, right? And the last week I talked about pastor that I met during the annual conference. You remember that? When I talk about mission trip, one of my friends, pastor, who doesn't go on mission, who doesn't like the mission, he actually criticized, including me, the people who go to mission, saying, Christians, they go mission for their own ambition. They don't pursue the will of God truly, but just they go mission because it makes them happy, right? And maybe they, with their own personal church's ambition, they go to mission trip. So he criticized people who go to mission like this. And what I shared the last week, you might be right. Yeah, that's a mistake that I made. On the first year when you go to mission trip, maybe God was not center of our life. Maybe with our own curiosity, with our own ambition, maybe tourism, maybe whatever reason, maybe we went to first mission trip. But pastor, friend, when can we go mission trip with a pure heart, putting God at the center of our life? You're right. That's what you need to do. But when can you do that? Is somebody born like that to go mission with a pure heart while the other people always bad? No, we are all wrong in the beginning. We don't go to mission trip with a pure heart in the beginning, but as we go again, we learn from our mistake, our failure, and then maybe someday we can give a true heart to God. We can go to true mission trip, putting the Jesus at the center of our life. But when can it happen? How can it happen? After many mistakes. That's the reason we go to mission trip. That we go again and again to learn more, to reach someday to be true Christian. The last Sunday passage I shared was Daniel chapter 3:18, right? Traditionally, Israel, they believed if only we believe in God faithfully, God will protect us in whatever circumstance. They were believing it. But their country was destroyed unexpectedly, very differently from their, the belief. God did not protect them, right? From the bottom of the failure, they had a new faith. They got evolution. So when the king Nebuchadnezzar threatened Daniel and then three friends that I'll throw you to the furnace if you do not worship the God that I made, idol, right? Their answer was like this: even if you try to throw us to the furnace, God will come to protect us. And this is that's the traditional faith. But something new they talk about: even if God does not protect us, that's a totally new. Because Israel again always believed if we faithful, God will protect us. But after failure, now their faith got evolved. They said even if God does not protect us, we'll keep our faith. We'll not worship the God that you made. It's the same confession. After going through many things, when you were young, we just thought, God, give me what you want, right? And we went through failure. We went through the mysteries of God. Maybe God worked for something good for us, but not always the same with what He expected. Then now we give this confession, even if God is silent, even if God does not answer to me, even if God does not listen to my prayer, but He is still my God, I will keep my faith. That's evolution. We need it. Again, the Christian journey, it's not like you just live day by day. You need to learn something today to live tomorrow. Something you learned, you got this year, with that, you can deal with the suffering which will come next year. You know what I mean? You need to upgrade. You need to evolve to deal with the more difficult things in your life because they're coming. We don't know, right? But whatever happened that in God's plan, God trained us to be ready to deal with the more difficult things we are growing. To talk about upgrade and evolution, because maybe you might understand clearly what I meant, maybe Thomas. I want to talk about game. I hate the phone game, but I'll talk about game. Have you ever played this thing? What is this? Candy Crush. If you ever played the Candy Crush, raise your hand. Right? Everybody, right? Oh, you guys never played the Candy Crush? Okay, let's be honest, right? This is like a first generation smartphone game. Everybody was crazy. Do you know who were the best in our church for the Candy Crush? Who? As far as I know, it was Olivia. She was like a level 400 or something like the ones that. Anyway, that the one thing brilliant about this, the Candy Crush, there's a stage you need to challenge, right? You are the stage 2, stage 50, stage 100, and then you keep challenging to go to the next stage. You go on your journey. That actually makes people excited, right? Not just the complete the one mission, but if I finish this mission, next mission come. That's a good thing about the Candy Crush, right? But you know what? Who still play Candy Crush? Nobody, right? If you still play, you're something wrong, right? Even JJ, when I asked, hey, JJ, do you play Candy Crush? He played once and said, no, I don't play anymore. Why? It's so boring. And then what do you play? I play something else, right? He play Pokemon Go, Battle Cat, Brawl Stars. And I asked JJ, hey, why the Candy Crush is boring? Why this game is not boring? And he and I talked, and actually we found a big difference between first generation smartphone game Candy Crush and then all these new games. What's the big difference? Skylar? Look at the clue. Oh, you cannot see where? You know, Candy Crush, there's a next stage, but you are always the same, the one who play. You don't get evolved. You don't get upgraded. But all the games after that you like it, whenever you finish the one stage, what happened? You get the coin, you get the money, you get the credit. And with that, what do you do? You get the new armor, new sword, and you evolve. That's what people make crazy, right? That all the the first time the Battle Cat, we get the rare cat and super cat, uber super cat. Whenever our items like characters, the Pokemon Go, that all the things get evolved, and you get the rare Pokemon, and they were more powerful. That make people go crazy. Is that right? That's the reason we love it. People need to get upgraded to deal with the more difficulty. If you just live day by day, if you stay same, last 5 years, 10 years, you cannot be ready for the things coming up, right? That's how God walked through the history. Today we want to talk about the Bible, Ezra and Nehemiah. As you can see the chart, if you see Ezra and Nehemiah, that's the end of the history of Israel. You see, history start from, Old Testament start from Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and from, Exodus, the Exodus come, they settle down to the Canaan, and, Judges and Joshua, and they become, the Samuel and the kingdoms, and these, country go up and down, and at the end of their history, the Israel was destroyed, right? After Israel was destroyed, Ezra and Nehemiah came as a leader who led the people from the exile place of Babylonia come back to the promised land, Israel. And they built the second temple. So we want to read about the story about Ezra and Nehemiah. But important thing, if you see history of Israel, they keep returning to somewhere. Think about again, what was there? There's two big exodus in the Old Testament. The first one, they were slave in Egypt, right? And then they came back from Egypt to the promised land, Canaan. That's the first Exodus in book of Exodus. What's the second Exodus? That's actually Ezra and Nehemiah. They were all exiled. They were living, they came back to their promised land, but they were deported from their country. They were living in Babylonia. 70 years later, according to God's will, the King Cyrus said, oh, you guys will go back. You can go back. And then the people of Israel came back from Babylonia to the Israel again. That's what it called second Exodus, right? And when was the third Exodus? Actually, it's not in the Bible, but history, 1947, after World War II, the Jews who all spread the world, actually they all came back to the land of Israel again to build the new country again, right? If you see these people, there's some pattern. Some reason they were kicked out from their country. Some reason they left the country. Some reason they were deported from their country, but they were coming back. And it happened again. People deported and exiled, and they coming back. And again, right? There's some pattern in their history. I don't see any human history, any culture, country, they went through what they went through, right? If people are deported, that's it. They don't come back. If they come back, maybe only one time, not like deported again, coming back again after 100 years, after 1,000 years, after 70 years, it never happened. Let's see how the first Exodus happened. Who led the people of Israel, bring them back to the promised land? Who did that? Moses, right? Not just Moses, God did it. First Exodus, people did not want to come back to their land. But God's mighty hand stretched them, wonders, and 10 plagues, and then dividing the sea into two, and then feeding the desert for 40 years. God almost dragged them with Moses' leadership, charismatic leadership. At last, they came back to their land, right? That was the first Exodus. 1,000 years passed from there, maybe 1,400 years passed from there, and country was destroyed. And then during the Ezra and Nehemiah time, who was the leader to bring them back to the country? Anybody remember? Ezra and Nehemiah? They didn't lead the people to the country. They more like a leader to help people build up the second temple. Was there any miracle that God came like in Moses' time and then led the people with the miracle from kingdom of the empire of Babylonia? Actually, there's no miracle, no charismatic leadership story in second Exodus. Think about again that they came back from their Babylonia to the Israel 70 years later. How long has you been in this country? If you are the children of immigrant, right? I think most of us, I know the Matthew's father come like 46, 7 years ago. Rachel, when did your parents come to this country first time? How long was it? 40, 30? So it's been a while, right? So like 40 years means, so immigrants come to the new place and their children already grow up. And if you add another 30 years, their children, the second generation's children become third generation, like maybe Kevin become like another 30 years, he's 40 years old. That means his children also, the fourth generation grow up, they completely settle down. The first generation who are about 20, 30, 40 years old, they came to this country, they have children, they grow their children. Next to 70 years, the second generation get older, like become 80 years old like that. Third generation become like 40 or 50 years ago, and fourth generation become like 10 years old, 20 years old. These are four generations, that's 70 years. Is there any reason your family will go back to China, Korea, the land you came from? No, you already completely settled down. Your second, third, fourth generation completely become a citizen of that country, right? There's no reason you guys come back. So 70 years later, since they become exile, people of Israel, now their third and fourth generation, completely speak the language in Babylonia and Assyria. They lost almost their parents' language. And there's the land was desolate, right? It was really poor. But all of a sudden, it's a voluntary. King did not say you should go back. Anybody who wants to go back to their country, you can go back after 70 years, they said. And the big group of people, they decide to come back from Babylonia to Jerusalem, to Israel. That's the second Exodus. Again, why did that thing happen? No leader, no miracle, but how could people do that? Because of history, the memory of history, all the things they went through. The first Exodus, people in Israel, they had nothing. They just had like a very grim memory of Abraham. That's it, right? But these people who become exile, what do they know about their ancestors? They have a memory of a first Exodus. Yeah, our ancestors, God led them, brought them out from Egypt with the mighty hands, through the desert, and then through the ocean. Right? We know the story about the judges. We heard the story about David, the great king, and Solomon built the great temple. And they're all the big, like Elijah, the fought against the Baal prophet, like 600 Baal prophet at the mountain Carmel, and the Hezekiah, Josiah. They're all the great story of history in the memory of these people. The power of a memory of the history made them to come back to their country, right? That is a power that how God walked through them. Today's passage, Ezra chapter 4, is about the people who came back. So these people came back 70 years later to their country. Now they try to build the temple again, right? When they try to build the temple again, it says like this: the enemies of Judah and Benjamin. The enemies we'll see later, but they are the people, the residents of Israel, who were not Israelite, but as the Assyrian king and Babylonian king, they deported the Israelites to foreign country. They also moved the other country resident to Israel. Maybe open the Second King. Second King chapter 17, verse 24. Open the Second King chapter 17 and verse 24. They're very exciting story there. You would like to read. So the Second King chapter 17, verse 24, it says, the king of Assyria brought the people from Babylon Kuthan, Ava, Hamath, and then Sepharvaim, and then settled them in the town of Samaria, the land of Egypt, to replace the Israelites. They took over Samaria and lived in its town. And we're not going to read it here, but read it through the Bible. They're a very interesting story. They didn't know how to worship God, so God sent the lions to kill the people. So the Babylonian king was shocked. They sent the Israel priest to teach this foreigner how to worship the God there. So these foreigners actually start worship the God of Israel there, but they did not worship God exclusively. They kept their own God. They brought from their homeland, and they kept their God, and then they kept the God of Israel. That's what happened, right? So later, it says like this. They worshiped the Lord because they found the presence of the Lord in the land of Israel. So they worshiped the Lord, but they also served their own gods in accordance with the customs of the nations from which they have been brought. So these are the people, when people of Israel came back from the exile, there were already people who were living there 70 years from foreign country. They were worshiping their God, God of Israel, and they were worshiping their own gods. So these people came to Israel, and so now they are suggesting them, when their enemies, the enemies of Judah and Benjamin, heard that the exiles were building, they came back, they're building a temple for the Lord, the God of Israel. They came to Zerubbabel, one of the leaders of Israel, and the head of the families and said, let us help you build, because like you, we seek your God, have been sacrificing to him since the time that Esarhaddon, king of Assyria, who brought us here. So they were saying, oh, you come back here to build the temple? Let's do it together, because we are worshiping that God too, right? Since we moved here, we saw the presence of God, power of God, so we are worshiping your God, so let's build up temple together. Again, they just came back, moved from Babylonia. They were poor, not many people. They needed a hand. It could be very good help. But they said no, right? But Zerubbabel, Joshua, and the rest of the head of families of Israel answered, you have no part with us in building a temple to our God. We're not going to do with you. So because of they rejected their help, after that, the people, the enemies, they around them set out to discourage the people of Judah and make them afraid to go on building. If you read the book of Ezra and Nehemiah, it's all battle and fighting with these people. The neighbors, they didn't like the people of Israel build the temple because first of all, they offered help. But people of Israel rejected their help, so they could not work together. And the residents there, they hate the Israelites. There were ongoing war. That's all the story about Ezra and Nehemiah. So let's ask, why did the people of Israel say no to build the temple with these people? It could be good help, right? The reason they said no, because they didn't have a common memory. They said they believed the same God, but it was not same God. Who was the God of Israel? To the Israelite, God of Israel means God of Moses, the God who led the people through the desert, the God who appointed David as a king, the God who had been with the history of Israel. That was the God of Israel. And these people know the name of this God, but they don't have any memory. Even if they claim that we believe the same God, actually it was not the same God. People of Israel could not worship, could not build the same faithful community with those who do not share their common memory. Your memory with your God defines who you are, right? And without that, you cannot move forward. As I showed the game again, every stage you need to go through your life, right? When you go through your life, you learn something with your God and actually with your faithful congregation. You gather here, and then you learn something, and you move forward. Again, if I see the historical chart here, there's a big difference from first Exodus and second Exodus. It's not like they will keep getting better. Maybe they were more rebellious, more sinful, and then they become like a wrong people. But surprisingly, after 1,000 years later, without Moses, without miracles, these people could be able to come back. They came back with their decision. Again, why? Because all the memories they have. And that's not only the glorious memory, shameful memory too. During the book of Judges, the shameful, the massacre, the civil war each other. Great King Hezekiah, his son Manasseh was the worst king who killed all the prophets, including Isaiah. But after Manasseh, another son became Josiah, who's the most righteous poor king, right? These are going up and down on history. These are accumulating their memory, and it just create new people as people of Israel who could come back to the land. Now think about that, who you are here, right? So 9 years ago, we planted this church. How much are you different? Because you went through last 9 years with how many things we do together? Every year, VBS and retreat and Christmas and Valentine and mission trip. These are things are your memory, right? They make us different. You know, the beginning of last week was a VBS week. It was really awesome. This is a VBS photo that all the volunteers at the end of the VBS, right? And when I look at them, I feel like it's really amazed. You know, many of them 9 years ago were just a youth or elementary. Now they grow up, they become the teacher. You know, one day when I was driving with JJ, actually, JJ been another VBS last week, not this week, but last week, okay? But that VBS was one of a big Korean church, and they actually had their own Korean school where they hired 20 steps. So 20 paid step for the VBS. How much professional it will be, right? So when I went there, the leaders were doing the handless mic, and we do it's like operation. They were doing K-pop things, and then, wow, that church VBS is awesome. That's how I felt, right? I thought if I were JJ, I would say my parents, I want to attend that church, right? So last week, during our VBS, I was driving the JJ home, and I said, I just it just happened. I made a mistake. I asked JJ, hey JJ, which VBS is better? Dang, I shouldn't have asked it, right? And JJ answered, I don't know. It was unexpected. After I asked a question, I thought, it was a wrong question. He would say the first VBS with the professional teachers. We said, I don't know. What do you mean I don't know? The other church, teachers was good, the worship dance is good, but game, New Christian was much better. Who led the game this year? Arthur. Wow. You know, let me give you this compliment. When I saw how he's leading the game at the fellowship hall, he was like me 20 years ago. The biggest compliment that I can give. I was a super genius for leading the game, that I could control the keys and then readjust, inventing, and then even Arthur said, I connect the message with the games, and I improvise every day, that whatever message we heard, I put in the game, and then, but when I saw he's leading the game, it was awesome, really, right? And even JJ thought, I cannot say which VBS is better because here game is much better than there. Even though the 20 paid step professional VBS teachers, they couldn't do that. Was Arthur like that 5 years ago? No. Last 5 years ago, being a Sunday school teacher, he was growing, he was learning step by step, and he getting better. And it's just not Arthur. Look at this decoration that Julie made it, and all our VBS team. We are just growing up. And then if we don't grow up, we cannot deal with the next year. You know what I mean? What we learned today, with that memory, with that teaching, we deal tomorrow, right? Whatever difficult come tomorrow, God prepare us like this. Next year, maybe more storms come, and maybe 5 years later, we'll go through desert in our life, or faithful life, whatever. The things coming. But don't worry, because God make you ready while you are faithful, walking with God. Again, the BBS, I thought it's just one routine BBS. Should we do the BBS every year? It's just the annual, every summer we're supposed to BBS because we have to do BBS. That's what I thought in the beginning of BBS. But when I see how our volunteers serving the people, they're growing through it, they're learning, and with what they learned, they will offer the Cuba BBS. With what they learned, they will offer the next year BBS. And what they learned the last 5 years, they are pouring out to build up the next thing, right? Whatever things coming up in our life, as long as we are step by step upgraded, evolved in God's plan, we are strong enough. We are capable of dealing things coming. Again, it's a purpose. We have a purpose, it's a quest. We're supposed to survive as a faithful congregation. The last year, I started one of the Bible study really going on in the church is Eddie and Evelyn and I, three of us, we're doing the every week Bible study more than a year now, every Wednesday morning, right? And then when I asked Eddie, hey, shall we do the one-to-one Bible study? She said, oh, yes, do it. And then later she told me that actually she didn't want to do the Bible study when I said the first time. But she thought like this when I asked, hey, Eddie, shall we do the Bible study, the weekly, one-to-one? And she said, we went through so many things together already. So why not, right? The things we went through. Remember that? Scarlett gave a testimony this morning about Jane. But things we went through, all those sorrow, all those joyful moments, and all those struggles. Some of us left, some of us came back, and some of us, we just feel like repeating the same thing again and again. But all the things we went through, that define who we are, because God walked through time. God walked through life. God walked through the history. Looks like a history of Israel was just failing, going down, spirally down again and again, but eventually they become a people who survived because they have a memory about what God has done for them. All the things you do, right? The VBS, mission trip, every year just you think, oh, another reputation, another retreat, another Christmas party, another New Year Eve, another potluck. It's not just another thing. It's accumulating in your memory. It builds up the community. And again, we are very different now. Maybe not as a number, but if you see each one of you 8 years ago, what was your faith? What kinds of memory did you have with God or with your church? But what you went through last 8 years, that make this congregation. When I see these kids, I saw church is strong. Not because of a number, again, each one of them who those survived the last 8 years, growing, maybe Henny gave a lot of influence to them, maybe I gave, or the Sunday school teachers, we went through volleyball together, we went through BBS, and they were students, now they become a volunteer. I believe they'll become a leader, they will take over the leadership of this church. About maybe 10, 20 years ago, their children will be part of a church. That is the history of the church. That is the history of Israel. And at the end of it, they fulfill their purpose as a people of God. They survive keeping their faith. They stand before God. That's what we do every day. It's not, again, repetition. It's not just another event. We're going through to learn, to get evolved, to get upgraded. So we deal with the things coming up, and we'll deal with them with the power of God, with our brothers and sisters, and that's the church. Let's pray.